Good afternoon, folks. Oz here from planetOZ, and as you can see, it is a beautiful day here on planetOZ. I'm on a rooftop in a kind of urban area, and it's a little gentrified, I guess, for my tastes. We have those issues on planetOZ too. Every time the Undorks move into a particular area, the Glarnoks just head for the hills, and it's just like, they don't want to coexist. So we have these issues on planetOZ just like y'all do on Earth, and it's anyway, we'll get past it. We're working on it too. So anyway, but that is neither here nor there. What are we talking about today? Today I want to talk about the question of whether or not the universe is a single giant consciousness. And I was inspired to talk about this because there's this guy who put out a scientific article, and I'm not sure exactly when he did this, but I saw a story about it about a week ago. And his paper asks if the universe is a giant neural network. And so he legit wrote this up, scientific paper, submitted it. It's, I guess, goes into peer review or whatever happens with such things at this point. His name is Vitaly Vanchurin. Real name, at least that's what he says, is Vitaly Vanchurin wrote a paper about how the cosmos is a giant neural network. Anyway, I'll link to the article in the description if anybody wants to check it out. But what he says, in essence, is that when you are examining questions related to quantum physics, and I've gone over some of these in other films, things like the double slit experiment, if you want to see what's going on with that, things like that. There are experiments that illuminate the serious questions and the seeming I don't know what we would call it aside from an instability of sorts, or an inability to accurately predict exactly what it's going to do and what is going to happen at the subatomic level. And so you get into quantum physics, and there are these mysteries and there are these puzzles to the way things behave. This author of this paper is basically saying that when you look at neural networks and how neural networks operate, and this is my interpretation, but I think what he's getting at is at the point at which what we know and can understand about how neural networks work, apparently you get to a point where you get granular enough and you get small enough, and it suddenly gets real tricky. And basically, as a correlation, I think what he's saying is that trickiness of the subatomic weirdness, the mysteries that are going on in the quantum, have a very strong correlation to the mysteries that are going on in the quantum of neurology, so to speak. I guess I could be butchering it, but I think that's what he's saying. And this is interesting because it falls in alignment with things people have said or theorized about many times over the years, and it's in the grandest sense this idea that the universe is a consciousness, is a single giant grand consciousness. I like this idea because it's frustrating when you think about the efforts to explore the quantum, and there are atoms and there are particles and there are quarks, but no one has a jar, no one has a petri dish where they've captured a quark. There aren't jars with quarks glowing on people's shelves. It's a frustration in trying to find the thing What is the thing? When you get small enough, what is the BB? What is the ball? What is the knot? What is that thing? That solid thing that's spinning around other things and creating all of this action. You can't find it. If it exists, we haven't found it yet. What we end up with are mathematical models that describe things like atoms and particles and quarks and suggest their existence and how they behave. But in terms of what they are, in terms of saying, oh, we figured it out, the proton is made out of granite, or the proton is made out of gold. This doesn't exist. It's math. It's theory. It's an idea. And taken further, I like an analogy that I've heard of this idea, which is essentially that if you're watching a river, let's say it's a placid river, just kind of gently flowing along, and then you see a vortex in it. Suddenly there's a vortex that forms, and you look at that, and for a moment that's a thing. For a moment, something you can point to and say, there's a thing there. There's something there. Look, there's a vortex there. But in fact, there isn't anything there. There's nothing there that wasn't there all along. You had this placid water, and for a moment what it did was it spiraled. It assumed a form, a unique form, for a moment, and we look at it and we go, oh, there's a vortex, there's a thing. And as fast as that thing appeared, it then disappears. So so that analogy is great. That is an analogy that I've heard related to this idea of the fabric of the cosmos, the plenum, so to speak. A lot of descriptive words for this, whatever this material is that makes up our universe. And so from that material, if you were to think of it as a placid river, let's just say, from that material there are vortices popping up for a moment, spiral and do their thing, and then vanish. And if you slow that down, essentially what you would have is entire worlds. You would have people. You would have us. That is the suggestion. Not to minimize anybody's ego or diss at anybody or anything like that, but just to say that you're a vortex, basically. Not the true you, but the egoic rendering of you, the hologram, the experience that you're having this time through what you are, in a material sense. Looked at in our material world, it's a vortex of elements that have spun together, taken this form, and looks very solid, looks somewhat permanent, 90 to 100 years permanent, we think of ourselves. And but nonetheless, as you formed, pouring in, vortexing in, spiraling in through an umbilical to take from a cloud of possibilities, reduced to the singular form that you become, and then at the end of your life, your vortex swirls and dissipates out, and off you go. But before you came, in theory, there was nothing in the material sense, and through one lens, I'll talk about another lens, but one lens suggests there's nothing of a material lens that wasn't there before, and therefore you just swirled, spiraled, and reconfigured the material that was there to give it a unique form for a time, and then you released that form back into the ether, so to speak, back into the atmosphere, and it dissipates while the real you continues and probably incarnates many more times. So this idea of the universe as a neural network, I think, can be tested in kind of a cool way. If you do a search and you search for images of neural networks, you can see these depictions of them. I don't know what the extent to which these are photographs, and there might be some electron microscope or microscopic photography they're doing. Otherwise, they're renderings, but pretty good ideas of what a neural network looks like. If you then do a search for the cosmic web, And there are some of these might be photographic renderings again, but a lot of them are probably artistic renderings. But essentially the idea here is that when we look out into space, we see our sun, our planets, and the various stars. They all look very distinct and separated by voids of nothingness. But in actuality, all of these things are connected. So all of the stars are connected together, and the stars connect to all of the planets. And this is all happening by virtue of these things I've always heard described as and called filaments. And so there are filaments of electromagnetic energy, plasma, perhaps. Sometimes you'll see a picture of the Earth and it'll be depicted with its various fields around it. This is the kind of thing that people are talking about. And so when all of these filaments are connected, you could see how that's rendered. And it isn't very difficult to tell. It doesn't take long looking at these things to very quickly see that if these plasma filaments were within the range of our visible light, if we could actually see them and we could actually see how the cosmic web connects together, and then you overlay an image of that on top of an image depicting a neural network, you can't help but say, wow, as above, so below. This looks exactly the same. And taken in another direction, taken into the realm of the spiritual, there is the idea in Hindu teachings and writings. It's talked about how we exist in God's dream. I think that's Maya. I might be confusing my terms, but we all exist in God's dream. And sometimes people describe the reality we're living in as a very, very, very lucid, dense, lucid dream, but a dream. And people use that to explain how the law of attraction works, in saying that you go to sleep at night and you have a very vivid dream. Manifestation is near instantaneous when you're dreaming. You just think of where you are and you're there. You think of who you're with and you're with them. You think you want to fly and you can fly. And that's how we imagine the dream state. Then we wake up into a reality that, as we believe it, as our mainstream material world understanding is, it doesn't work that way. Now we're in a world of rules created by random science and the actions of other people, and we're just kind of along for the ride. But another way of viewing that would be that this actually is another dream, and so you wake up from one dream into another one. But this one is very dense, and it's a lucid dream. It's very dense and it's very slow. So manifestation in this realm does happen because it is a dream, but the manifestation takes a lot longer. So long that it is able to hide behind the veil of confusion and the other veils that we operate behind when we exist in a realm like this by design. We're supposed to forget. It's supposed to be an illusion. It's supposed to be convincing. And ultimately, we are supposed to figure that all out. But what fun is figuring that all out if it's handed to us on a silver platter, if it's made very easy? So rather, this idea goes, it's made difficult. It's a very challenging to see that we are creating everything in our reality because of the speed, because we're not patient, because we're not looking for it, and perhaps because we have a narrative surrounding us in all directions that is driven to suggest that this reality is physical and atoms smash and it's all random and you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, you know. So, so anyway, if in fact this universe is a giant consciousness, a giant neural network, it presents a lot of questions. It can be looked at in a very inspiring and positive way. For example, in the Course in Miracles, it would tell you that while these little vortices might pop up on the river and disappear, and you might be looking at a huge placid river and think, well, what significance could that tiny vortex have on what is going on? But on closer examination, if you really had the math to understand the movement of every ebb and flow of that massive river, you would find that absolutely nothing is happening by accident, and all things are like the butterfly effect. All of these things are contributing to the grand thing, and that river and how it moves and how it functions would not be the same and would not work as it does if not for even that tiny one little vortex that you're able to observe. So, in short, everything matters. Absolutely everything contributes to the whole. So, in the Course in Miracles, it would basically explain that within this incredible dream, there is that one tiny vortex, that kind of swirled around. And what would that be described as? In A Course in Miracles terms, it's a thought of God. So each individual entity is a thought. However, the whole does not work without any single one of those thoughts, no matter how small. So that's an inspiring kind of idea from the Course in Miracles perspective. But anyway, all of these things kind of dovetail together to support Vitaly Vanchurin's white paper submitted, or whatever he did, his theory. He desires peer review on the idea that we are existing in a neural network. I believe there is a very strong chance that that is absolutely true, and almost zero chance that the peer review process is going to bear that fact out. So perhaps it's maybe a tongue-in-cheek stunt on his part to a certain extent. I don't know. You know, you kind of got to believe he probably knows he's got it. Maybe. I mean, I think he's got it. But what are the peer reviewers going to say? I don't know. Probably that he's a wackadoo. That's how these things seem to go. Even on planetOZ, it's like that. We're figuring it out. We're all figuring it out together. So, yeah. Anyway, that is some noodlings on our realm as a giant neural network, a giant consciousness. It would explain the law of attraction. It would explain a lot of the phenomena that we observe, a lot of what people say, a lot of this like wild phenomena. How can that be part of our reality? Well, if our reality is some sort of a hodgepodge, composited, conglomerated, coagulated cocktail of all of our many, many, many musings and ideas, and the individuated consciousnesses, each one of us contributing to this incredible, massive swirl, incredible river of wild vortices in multitude, each one different, each one unique, and each one necessary to the whole. I like that. So I'll end this one on the Course in Miracles definition. It's like this whole thing, yeah, maybe it's a giant neural network, maybe it's the imagination of God, maybe it's a giant lucid dream, but whatever it is, it must have you. Every single one of us is absolutely necessary for the whole thing to work. And I don't know, kind of makes you feel good, doesn't it? All right, Godspeed, friends, from planetOZ.